Thank you for taking the time to watch my video. I really appreciate it. If you enjoyed this video, please click thumbs up, as that will help grow my channel. If you'd like to subscribe, I'd appreciate that as well. And if you have any questions, feel free to leave those and I will respond. Again, thank you. So here's my next project. And leave a comment. I'm wondering, not that it will matter, your comment, because by that time I've already made a decision, but let's talk a little bit about this piece of wood and then talk about my options on how to turn it. So it is a burl. For those that don't know, burls are a disease like a cancer that grows on a tree that causes the wood to grow in all different directions. So typically in a burl, the grain pattern is not uniform. So if I look at this piece of wood, you see that the grain is running here. I suspect out in this area, it's going in all different directions. So that's one thing. The other is you can see the bark looks very different than normal bark. It's lumpier. So that's another difference. So I've got a few options. Knowing that this is the significant grain pattern is going to be out in this piece of wood, I could turn the bowl this way, making this the top and underneath here the bottom. That way, when you look into the bowl, you're going to see this, what I suspect will be very nice grain pattern right off the beginning. The other thing is, when I do this, if this is the top, I have the option of making this live edge. This bark is in good shape. It seems like it's nice and solid. So I could turn this and leave this on and make it live edge. So that's my question. Should I make it live edge, or should I make that the bottom, turn most of that away, and then have this as the top? When you do that, you're going to be looking at a fairly normal grain. It is cherry though. And cherry is a nice wood no matter what you do with it, but it'll be a straight grain. As you look down into the bottom of the bowl, you'll see more of this burl. But what I think I'm going to do, and again, this is where you can leave a comment. Let me know if you agree with my decision. I'm going to make this the top, and I'm going to mount it on my lathe here with my woodworm screw. And I'll turn away the bottom, which will turn away a lot of this wood here, this straight grain. And I do have some checking here on the end of this, but I suspect that will turn away as I turn it. Now, I may or may not be able to keep the bark. We'll see how that goes. I will try my best to keep the bark. So the first thing is make it round, see what I'm dealing with, shape the bottom. And so I'll probably come around here will be the rim at this point, just above this, and then we'll see how the bark looks at that point. So let's go ahead and get ready to mount this on the lathe. Again, leave a comment. Let me know if you think I made the right decision. So I drilled in here with my Forstner bit to make a spot for my woodworm screw, and I've got some bark inclusion here, which is not uncommon in a burl, but the problem is that's not going to hold my woodworm screw very well. So although that is the center, that is good there, I may drill a bit deeper. This is now going to be the top, so I can drill down here. I could drill down close to the bottom, although my woodworm screw's got some length through it too. I'll go a little further, see if I can get out of this, but I can't go too much. So I ended up drilling down a little bit further, but I was not able to get out of the bark inclusion. So what I ended up doing was just using some CA glue, pouring it into that area and letting that stiffen it up. So right now about 500 RPM is the best I can do with this. As I round it up, I'll speed it up, but right now that's the best I can do. One thing I've realized is I have a digital readout on this lathe. seeing what 500 RPM looks like, I now realize that my minimum speed on my old lathe was much faster than that. And if I go above 500 right now, it'll vibrate fairly badly. So here I am rounding it up. On the right side of your screen is what's going to be the bottom of the bowl, and the top of the bowl is mounted into my chuck with the worm screw. So I finished the tenon and I've reversed it. It's turning pretty good. When you reverse it quite often, it won't be the exact same as it was when it was mounted the other way, but it's pretty good there now. So I'm going to keep my tailstock engaged for a bit because it's still got a bit of unbalance to it until I start hauling the inside out. And then I'll have to remove the tailstock. But for now, I'm going to leave the tailstock engaged. So now I'm starting to work on the inside. Again, you can see the tailstock is still engaged. It's not really in my way. I can work around it, and it gives me a lot more stability. So I'm just getting it so that the bulk of the inside of the material is gone. My walls are starting to get thinner, and I'm starting to see here how much bark I'm going to be able to maintain. I like to use my carbide tool just up near the rim, especially when dealing with bark. It just reduces the chance of breaking any off. And then I switch back to my bowl gouge. Again, when you're doing the inside of a bowl, the bowl gouge is the quickest way to remove a lot of material fairly quickly. As you can see here, the shavings are coming off pretty quick. The other thing that I like when working with a burl, you tend not to have as many catches just because the grain is not in any one direction, which is one of the contributing causes to a catch. Now you can see what it looks like with my tailstock pulled back. I'm just going to, off camera here, just take my bowl gouge and remove that center nub. That center nub is now removed, and I'm just using my bowl gouge, working across the bottom of the bowl just to thin it out and level it up. Here I just have a small piece of bark that's a little loose, so I'm just going to take some CA glue, soak that area, and that will. So good news, we've managed to keep the bark. The inside needs to be flattened a bit on the bottom. It's a little high right here in the center. My wall thickness is good. I'll just kind of take that center down a bit, do a bit of sanding, and I should be in good shape. I do see that a small crack has opened up here. Doesn't look like it's gone all the way through. I'll put a little bit of glue and coffee in that just to close it up. This piece was a little wet to start with, so that's probably the reason that it's cracked. Oh, and this glue, this bark piece right here needs to be glued on as well. Here you can just see I'm using some CA glue, letting that run into the crack. It's a thin glue, so it'll absorb into the wood very well. And then once I've done that, I spray with an accelerator, and that'll make the glue set up instantly. And repair will be more solid than it was originally. I often, especially on the outside, will start with sheet paper rather than using my drill and doing power sanding. I'd feel that it just gives me a better start and I have more control. I know I've talked about this in previous videos, but when it comes to sanding, you've got to be careful, even more so than you do with the tool. I can cut with the tool out here, and you can see there's a ghost there. Like if you see, because I'm not solid, you see gaps, spaces there. Whereas when you get down to here, I'm into solid wood. You see that I don't see any air there. So this part I can sand pretty easily. I can hold sandpaper in here, and I can hold that sandpaper all the way out to there. Once I get out to there, that paper is going to catch. And if I'm using my fingers behind that paper, it's going to catch my fingers. Depending, sometimes I can turn the speed up fast enough, I can power sand, and I can get away with it, but you do have to be careful. Again, when you see that ghost, there's air passing through there because it's not solid. And I'm only turning 750 RPM, so that's not nearly fast enough. But again, you see here, I'm solid here, but if I hold here, as that comes around, I've got nothing there, nothing there. Maybe when I get back around here, I'll touch again. So you do have to be careful, especially sanding. Again, the tool against the tool rest is supported. The tool on the tool rest is supported. So it's a little bit different situation. And I can get away with holding my tool here, even though I'm going to only touch here, not here, not again till around here. So with that, it's well supported. I can use my tool this way. Sanding is a different story. On this bowl, I ended up doing a lot of hand sanding. And by hand sanding, I still use my power drill, but I did it with the lathe stopped. And the reason I did this, and this is one of the first times I've had to do this, the walls were a lot thinner than I normally turn. So as a result, they were flexing. So as they were spinning on the lathe, they were flexing, which was causing it to be a bit out of round, which was making it difficult to try and sand it while rotating. So that's the reason you see me sanding here with the lathe stopped. So now I'm applying first sanding sealer, which I've often done, but in this case, I'm applying it with a brush. The reason being because of that live edge makes it very difficult to apply it with anything other than a brush with the lathe stopped. What I didn't show in this process is after the sanding sealer went on, I also applied 2 coats of Tung Oil. Again, just because I can't put a friction polish on it because of the live edge. But that process of putting the Tung Oil on was very similar to the sanding. Once the finish has been applied, the next step is to remove the bowl from the lathe and to remove the tenon that you see here on the bottom of the bowl. So I put a cloth in between, and it also serves as anti-slip. And then I bring the live center up to the small hole that's in the center, which helps me identify where the center is, and then tighten everything up. And that friction alone will drive the bowl so that I can remove the tenon. I know I mentioned this before, but when using this friction fit, then I want to make sure that I'm doing all my cutting, pushing in the axial direction so that I'm not pushing sideways on the bowl, which could cause it to dislodge from the live center and have the bowl fly off. I continued to cut away at the tenon until it was just a very small nub, and off camera I just broke that off with my fingers. Now here I'm just working the rest of the bottom of the bowl, just flattening it out before I apply the finish to the bottom by hand. Again, notice I'm still in this friction fit and I'm applying all the load in the radial direction, no side load on the bowl. I applied 2 coats of the Tung Oil, letting it dry in between, and then just used a Scotch-Brite pad to denib the Tung Oil. And now I'm just buffing it, which just helps give the Tung Oil a little bit of a shine and also to remove any runs that may exist in the Tung Oil. So on this buffing wheel, I'm just loading up the first wheel, which is a triple E compound, which is a compound used for buffing. The most challenging part about this operation is to make sure that you have a very good hold on the bowl, because that wheel spinning will want to pull it out of your hands. It didn't happen with this bowl, but it has happened in the past. Here's the finished product, and as you can see, I was able to keep most of the bark on the rim. There's a couple spots that maybe there's a bit of bark missing, but for the most part, the bark stayed intact. Let me know in the comments if you think I made the right choice as far as how I orientated the bowl in the first place. Also, don't forget the contest. If you leave a contest, you'll be entered into the contest when I reach 500 subscribers for a bowl.